What if I told you that the difference between mediocrity and mastery isn't talent, isn't luck, isn't even intelligence, but something far more unsettling? Something that requires you to confront the deepest parts of yourself, to willingly enter a kind of controlled suffering that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Today we're going to explore one of the most misunderstood concepts in human development, the 10,000-hour rule, and why everything you think you know about it is probably wrong. The number 10,000 has haunted me for years. Not because it's large, though it is. Not because it's daunting, though it certainly can be. But because it represents something profound about the human condition that we rarely discuss openly. It represents the price of transformation. When Malcolm Gladwell popularized this concept in his book Outliers, he inadvertently created both a revolution and a misunderstanding. People latched onto the number as if it were a magic formula, as if simply logging hours would guarantee expertise. But they missed the darker, more complex truth lurking beneath the surface. Let me share something personal. When I was 22, I believed I was destined for greatness as a writer. I had talent. People told me so. I had passion. I could feel it burning in my chest. What I didn't have was any understanding of what real practice meant. I wrote sporadically when inspiration struck, when I felt like it. I confused activity with progress, enthusiasm with discipline. It took me 3 years to realize I was living in a beautiful delusion. The 10,000-hour rule didn't originate with Gladwell. It came from the work of psychologist Anders Ericsson, who spent decades studying expertise across domains. What Ericsson discovered was both liberating and terrifying. Liberating because it suggested that exceptional ability wasn't the exclusive domain of the genetically blessed. Terrifying because it revealed the true cost of mastery, a cost most of us aren't prepared to pay. But here's where it gets interesting, and where most people get it wrong. The rule isn't just about time. It's not about mindlessly repeating the same actions for 10,000 hours. That's practice, but it's not what Ericsson called deliberate practice. The difference is crucial, and it's the difference between spinning your wheels and actually moving forward. Deliberate practice is uncomfortable by design. It requires you to constantly work at the edge of your current ability, to repeatedly fail, to confront your weaknesses with surgical precision. It's the difference between a weekend golfer who plays for 20 years without improving and a professional who transforms their swing through systematic, targeted effort. The weekend golfer is practicing, but they're not engaging in deliberate practice. Think about this for a moment. In our comfort-obsessed culture, we've been conditioned to avoid discomfort at all costs. We have apps to make everything easier, services to eliminate friction, entire industries built around the premise that struggle is something to be minimized or eliminated entirely. But mastery demands the opposite. It demands that we seek out discomfort, that we make friends with failure, that we develop what I call a perverse intimacy with our own limitations. I remember watching a documentary about a young violinist preparing for a major competition. What struck me wasn't her talent, though she clearly had it. It was her relationship with mistakes. When she hit a wrong note, her face didn't show frustration or disappointment. Instead, she had this almost predatory focus, as if the mistake had revealed prey she could hunt down and eliminate. She would isolate that passage, slow it down, and repeat it until the error was not just corrected, but impossible to repeat. This is what deliberate practice looks like in action. But let's go deeper, because the 10,000-hour rule reveals something unsettling about human potential and the stories we tell ourselves about success. When we look at masters in any field, we tend to focus on their achievements, their moments of triumph, their public victories. We don't see the thousands of hours spent in anonymous struggle, the daily confrontation with inadequacy, the slow, grinding process of incremental improvement. Consider the modern obsession with overnight success stories. We celebrate the entrepreneur who built a billion-dollar company in 2 years, but we ignore the 15 years they spent failing at previous ventures, learning lessons that would prove crucial later. We marvel at the athlete who seems to come out of nowhere to dominate their sport. But we don't count the hours they spent in obscure gyms, on forgotten practice fields, developing the foundation that made their breakthrough possible. This is what I call the iceberg effect of mastery. We see the tip, the visible success, but the massive foundation of deliberate practice remains hidden beneath the surface. And this hidden foundation isn't just about skill development. It's about character development, about becoming the kind of person who can sustain excellence under pressure. Here's something Gladwell didn't emphasize enough, and it's crucial for understanding how the 10,000-hour rule applies to your life. The hours themselves are not the point. The point is the transformation that occurs during those hours. When you engage in true, deliberate practice, you're not just improving a skill. You're rewiring your brain, developing new neural pathways, literally changing the structure of your mind. Neuroscience has shown us that intense, focused practice creates what researchers call myelin, a fatty tissue that wraps around neural pathways and increases the speed and accuracy of signal transmission. But here's the fascinating part. This process is slow, incremental, and largely invisible. You can practice for months without seeing dramatic improvement, then suddenly experience a breakthrough that seems to come out of nowhere. The improvement was happening all along, but below the threshold of conscious awareness. This has profound implications for how we approach skill development in the modern world. We live in an instant gratification culture where we expect immediate results from our efforts. Social media has conditioned us to measure progress in likes and shares and immediate feedback. But mastery operates on a completely different timeline. It requires what I call faith in the invisible, the ability to continue working even when you can't see clear evidence of progress. Let me tell you about Sarah, a graphic designer I know who decided at 35 that she wanted to become a serious painter. She had some artistic background, but nothing that would suggest she could compete with people who had been painting since childhood. She made a commitment to paint for 2 hours every day, no matter what. Not when she felt inspired, not when she had time, but every single day. For the first year, her paintings were mediocre at best. She knew it, I knew it, anyone who saw them knew it. But she kept going. She studied the masters, she took workshops, she painted studies of the same subject over and over until she understood how light fell across different surfaces. She filled canvases with failures, with experiments, with attempts that fell short of her vision. 3 years in, something shifted. Her paintings began to show a depth and sophistication that surprised everyone, including herself. She hadn't suddenly acquired talent. She had developed it through the slow accumulation of deliberate practice. She had paid the price that mastery demands. But here's what's really interesting about Sarah's story. The transformation wasn't just in her painting ability. The discipline required for daily practice had changed her approach to everything else in her life. She became more focused at work, more patient with difficult people, more confident in her ability to tackle long-term challenges. The 10,000 hours of practice had rewired not just her artistic ability, but her entire character. This brings us to one of the most profound aspects of the 10,000-hour rule that rarely gets discussed. It's not just about becoming good at something. It's about becoming someone. The person who emerges after 10,000 hours of deliberate practice is fundamentally different from the person who began the journey. They have developed what psychologists call a growth mindset. But more than that, they have developed an intimate understanding of how human potential actually works. They understand that talent is not fixed, that intelligence can be developed, that what seems impossible today might be routine a year from now. They have internalized one of the most important lessons life can teach, that we are far more capable of change than we believe, but that change requires a kind of sustained effort that goes against every instinct our comfort-seeking minds possess. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Critics of the 10,000-hour rule point out that some people seem to reach high levels of performance with much less practice, while others practice extensively without achieving mastery. They're not wrong, but they're missing the point. The rule was never meant to be a guarantee or a precise formula. It's a rough estimate of what serious skill development requires, and it varies based on the complexity of the domain, the quality of practice, and yes, individual differences. But here's what the critics miss. Even if the number isn't exactly 10,000 hours for everyone, even if some people need more or less time, the underlying principle remains true. Exceptional performance requires sustained, deliberate practice over extended periods. There are no shortcuts to mastery that don't ultimately prove to be detours. In our age of artificial intelligence and automation, Some people argue that deep skill development is becoming obsolete. Why spend years mastering something when a machine can do it better? This question reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of what the 10,000-hour rule is really about. It's not just about acquiring specific skills. It's about developing the capacity for mastery itself. The person who has genuinely mastered one domain understands how to approach the mastery of others. They have developed pattern recognition abilities, learning strategies, and mental frameworks that transfer across fields. They have built what I call a mastery muscle, the ability to sustain focused effort in the face of difficulty and uncertainty. This is why the 10,000-hour rule is more relevant now than ever. In a rapidly changing world, the ability to quickly develop new competencies is becoming our most valuable asset. The person who has never experienced the deep transformation that comes from sustained, deliberate practice is at a profound disadvantage. Let me share another story, this one about failure. David was a software engineer who became obsessed with chess in his late 20s. He read every book, watched every video, played hundreds of games online. He was intelligent, analytical, everything you'd think would make someone good at chess. But he plateaued at an intermediate level and couldn't understand why. The problem wasn't his intelligence or his effort. The problem was his approach to practice. He was playing game after game, but he wasn't engaging in deliberate practice. He wasn't systematically identifying and working on his weaknesses. He wasn't studying his losses with the kind of brutal honesty that improvement requires. He was busy, he was active, but he wasn't practicing in a way that created change. When David finally understood this distinction, his improvement was dramatic. He started working with a coach who forced him to confront his tactical blindness, his positional weaknesses, his tendency to make impulsive moves under time pressure. It was uncomfortable, sometimes humiliating, but it was effective. Within 2 years, he had improved more than in his previous 5 years of casual study. David's story illustrates something crucial about the 10,000-hour rule. The hours must be earned, not just logged. Every hour of deliberate practice is a small act of courage, a willingness to confront the gap between where you are and where you want to be. This is why so many people abandon their pursuits before experiencing real transformation. Not because they lack talent, but because they underestimate the psychological demands of sustained improvement. The modern world offers us infinite distractions from this kind of deep work. Every few minutes, our devices buzz with notifications, updates, urgent demands for our attention. We've created an environment that's almost perfectly designed to prevent the kind of sustained focus that deliberate practice requires. This isn't an accident. There are entire industries built around capturing and monetizing our attention. Breaking free from this system requires what I call aggressive intentionality. You must actively design your environment to support deep practice. You must develop the ability to say no to good opportunities so you can say yes to great ones. You must learn to protect your attention as fiercely as you would protect your money or your health. Here's something that might disturb you. Most people will never experience what it feels like to truly master anything. They will live their entire lives in the shallow end of competence, never pushing through the difficult middle phase where real skill development occurs. They will mistake familiarity for expertise, activity for progress, comfort for competence. This isn't a judgment, it's an observation. Our culture doesn't prepare us for the psychological reality of skill development. We're taught to expect linear progress, immediate feedback, and consistent motivation. But mastery follows a different pattern entirely. It's characterized by long plateaus punctuated by sudden breakthroughs, periods of apparent stagnation followed by rapid improvement, moments of clarity emerging from prolonged confusion. Understanding this pattern is crucial because it helps you persist through the inevitable valleys of the learning process. When you've been working on something for months without seeing dramatic improvement, when you feel like you're just spinning your wheels, when the gap between your vision and your current ability feels impossibly wide, remember that this is normal. This is what skill development actually looks like. The 10,000-hour rule also reveals something profound about time itself. We tend to think of time as a resource we spend, but deliberate practice changes your relationship with time entirely. When you're engaged in deep, focused work on something meaningful, Time behaves differently. Hours can pass without notice. The present moment expands to encompass your entire reality. This is what psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi called flow. But it's more than just a pleasant experience. It's a glimpse into human consciousness at its highest level of function. In these moments, the barrier between self and activity dissolves. You become the practice itself. But getting to this level requires pushing through what I call the desert of competence, that long, difficult period where you're no longer a beginner but not yet advanced. This is where most people quit. The novelty has worn off, progress feels slow, and the goal still seems impossibly distant. This is also where the real transformation occurs. Think about what 10,000 hours actually represents. If you practice 2 hours a day, every day, it would take you almost 14 years. If you practice 1 hour a day, it would take 27 years. These time frames force us to confront something uncomfortable about our relationship with achievement. We want mastery, but we want it quickly, efficiently, without the messy, prolonged process that mastery actually requires. The 10,000-hour rule is ultimately a rule about patience. Not passive waiting, but active, persistent engagement with difficulty over extended periods. It's about developing the ability to delay gratification on a massive scale, to make investments whose returns won't be visible for years. In a world increasingly dominated by quarterly earnings reports, viral content, and instant everything, this kind of long-term thinking is becoming both rarer and more valuable. The person who can sustain effort across years and decades has access to possibilities that are simply invisible to those trapped in short-term thinking. As we near the end of our exploration, I want to leave you with a question that has haunted me for years. If you knew that dedicating 10,000 hours to something would guarantee a profound transformation, not just in your abilities, but in who you become as a person, what would you choose to pursue? What skill, what craft, what domain of knowledge would be worth that level of commitment? The question itself is transformative because it forces you to confront what you really value, what you're willing to sacrifice for, what legacy you want to leave in the world. Most people never ask themselves this question seriously. They drift from interest to interest, hobby to hobby, never committing deeply enough to experience the profound satisfaction that comes from true competence. The 10,000-hour rule isn't just about becoming good at something. It's about proving to yourself that you're capable of sustained excellence, that you can commit to something larger than your immediate comfort, that you can become someone you currently can't imagine being. The choice is always yours. You can continue living in the comfortable shallows of casual competence, or you can dive into the deeper waters where transformation awaits. But understand this, the 10,000 hours will pass regardless of what you do with them. The question isn't whether you have the time. The question is whether you have the courage to use it intentionally. The path to mastery is not for everyone, but it's available to everyone. It doesn't require special talent or perfect circumstances. It requires only the willingness to begin, and then the discipline to continue when beginning becomes difficult. It requires you to make friends with discomfort, to find meaning in slow progress, to trust in a process whose full benefits won't be visible until you're deep into the journey. Your 10,000 hours are waiting. The question is, what will you do with them?